Matti and discuss very important the tax and MDGs, although there are some, tax is very important as one source also of financing social protection, and our MDG is also able to be realized. And anyway, let Matti explain more about it.
I think to sort of give a bit of background on how I started to work on the linkages between tax and social rights, tax and economic rights. I started with the question that every year in developing countries, about $800 billion flows away to rich countries as illicit capital flight. The countries which we know as tax havens harbor about $32 trillion, which is about a quarter of the whole financial wealth in the entire world. Today, investors, when they go to poor countries, they expect to have 10 years of tax holidays, tax exemptions on their businesses. They expect also reductions on wages that they pay to their workers, and possibly other workers' rights and environmental rights or payments. So I was angry that investors and wealthy people get away not paying tax. And the consequence of that is that there isn't seemingly enough money to pay for universal health coverage. That the politicians increasingly also in Europe are telling us that there's no alternative to austerity, there's no alternative to having poor health, that we can't possibly cover the informal sector, as if there isn't money to pay for it. And I think this is the kind of question that politicians give us. That, of course we believe in universal health coverage. Surely we believe in free education, but because we don't have the money, people have to wait. Now, I was quite angry with that answer, and I think we should continue to be angry, because the money is there. And I just wanted to say that this debate about financing universal health coverage and financing social protection schemes is not something new. We've had it throughout history. I want to say that there's two sides to the debate. The World Health Organization in the Commission on Social Determinants of Health has said that if it's more efficient that it's not growth we should be for. We should be looking at social protection as the first step. Where when we ask the INF, we say, right, healthcare costs are rising, and we can't pay for it. So, the dilemma is there. So we started looking at what is taxation. When we ask the politicians about taxation, they always tell us about, it's about efficiency, neutrality, and don't bother the businesses too much or they'll go away. But we have to give sort of social causes and social criteria for taxation. So taxation, first of all, is to raise enough revenue to finance welfare. That's the only purpose we pay taxes, right? And governments will say, no, we want to minimize the tax burden on businesses. But I'm not interested in the minimize the tax burden. I'm interested in raising enough revenues, and we have to find out how much that is. But raising the sufficient amount of revenues so that we can finance our welfare policies. Secondly, taxation is about redistribution. So you tax the wealthier more than the poor. And the minimum threshold of paying taxes should be the poverty line. So whoever's below the poverty line should not pay income tax, and also indirect taxes, such as the value-added tax, should be low enough. Not 20% like now in many countries, but maybe 5-10%, so that they're not taxed to death, the poor. Taxation and this is interesting, it's also about regulation. The reason why we had a corporate income tax in the 1920s was that companies were out of control in the 1920s throughout the world, and the United States and many European countries started taxing corporations to know what they're doing. So it's not only about extracting money from companies, but for them to be more accountable to society. So taxation is about regulation and accountability. Then maybe somebody talked about taxes on alcohol and cigarettes. In Ghana, they're called sin taxes. In other countries, we can call them excise duties on negative social externalities. That's the word. I like the sin taxes. It means that we tax the products that cause harm in society at a higher level. That's why we have an excise tax on beer, tobacco. And those products that are good to you should be taxed less, or even subsidized, of course, like medication, and like books, which are very good to you. And of course we need to have ecological reforms in our tax system. So if you pollute, you pay more tax. So carbon taxes, vehicle taxes should be based on the size of the vehicle, if possible. And taxation is finally about representation. So citizens are represented when they defend their rights in terms of pay taxes. When they become together as chimney drivers in the Philippines, and they go to the government and say, we want better roads, we want you to subsidize, so the chimney drivers can come together and represent themselves as government, and so can other professions. And that has worked in the informal sector, at least in Ghana, where the transport drivers have come together, and they are taxed at a very small amount through their union. So that's the same slide. And it's also about reallocation to public services. So it's the subsidy side. So reducing inequality, we tax the rich more, but we give the money to the poor. So public services is one of the most effective ways to redistribute, because the users will be predominantly lower and middle class. So, who pays for the state? It's very important to raise awareness and educate people, social movements, everybody, about who actually pays for your government. Mostly, in many countries, the poor and the middle classes pay proportionately more. The reason is indirect taxation, value-added taxes, are mostly paid by the poor. The poor are the majority. Everybody pays VAT on rice, on jeepney tickets, on different products, and the poor pay the government. So we should change that and make tax more progressive, make tax more fair, so the public services are financed in a fair manner. There are three categories of taxes. There are direct taxes on income, indirect taxes on consumption, and trade taxes. And the tax base should be broad. We should be taxing also financial transactions. Now, let me explain it. This is a picture of African countries, how they raise their revenues from 1996, the beginning, to 2008. This is the African Development Bank statistics. Now, the main increase in government revenues has been extractive industries from 1996 to 2008. There has been a slight increase in indirect and direct tax, a small increase. Trade tax has reduced because of World Trade Organization and because of trade tax. So tax and customs has reduced because of free trade agreements. The one chunk is aid. So there is a jump in aid because of debt relief in Africa, but it has come down to the same level afterwards. Now, tax revenues have increased somewhat, but we should separate that there are non-tax revenues like the extractive industries, which are a very large part of African financing, and those tend to be easily misused because you have three taxpayers, three oil companies, and they can corrupt an entire government of Nigeria. Now, remember, direct, indirect, and trade tax. I look at African countries. How do they perform in achieving Millennium Development Goals? Okay? Some countries collect less than 10% of tax for GDP, excluding extractives, not oil, but tax. There's a long list. Some countries collect from 10 to 15% of tax for GDP. Other countries collect 15 to 20%, small list, and a small number of countries collect more than 20% of tax per the national income annually. Okay? The data from the African Development Bank. So it is not the same as GDP. Some countries have high GDP in the long tax group. It is not aid. Aid goes to disregarding tax. But if we look at the results, the more you collect tax, you reduce malnourishment. The 20% group has nearly achieved its MDG of halving malnourishment. Anyway, it's the best reform. Literacy costs quite a lot of money, so that only in the 20% group are we achieving literacy rates which we can be proud of. Enrollment in primary schools, out-of-pocket payments for school fees. Families tend to pay for their boys, or they leave the girls unschooled. But if it is free, the girls tend to attend school at the same rate. But giving free education is gradually increasing. Mortality is gradually decreasing as countries collect more tax. Maternal mortality is decreasing as countries collect more tax. HIV has other reasons. So southern African countries have more HIV. However, those living in high tax countries in Africa tend to have antiretroviral drugs. So if they are HIV positive, they would be taken care of if they are living in a high tax country. But if you live in Angola, Nigeria, or other countries which are low tax countries, you are unlikely to receive HIV/AIDS medication. Sanitation improves above 15%. Slums decrease as the tax collection increases. Water, as well, is provided gradually. So my conclusion is to say, tax to GDP is a development indicator. It may be one of the most important development indicators. But I am surprised to see that it's not measured by the UN MDG Commission. And therefore it must be included in the next revision of the Global Development Goals or Sustainable Development Goals, whatever we have in the post-2015 process. We must have a better picture of who pays tax. This survey is unique. The data I gained from the African Development Bank was a unique survey. It must be systematic. The IMF is doing nothing about knowing where tax comes from. The IMF government finance statistics are very poor quality. The World Bank has poor quality data on tax. We must have good quality data on tax and measure tax performance with outcomes in social protection. And then we know how much does health cost, how much does education cost. And therefore we can make better campaigns to say, do we need 2% like in the Philippines? Do we need 5% like in 6% less in Thailand, or how much do we need of GDP? And then we calculate, so we need 5% for health, we need 6% for education. The government to run its bureaucracy maybe needs 4% more. So in the end we must have 20% tax for GDP, otherwise there's no chance of having social protection and universal health. So that's my message. Thank you. And just one more. At Oxfam, I've distributed our blog, which is called Global Health Check. If you'd like to sign up for the Global Health Check blog, please put your name here. And I have a report on blind optimism, why we believe public services is the right way to provide health, so you can pick up the report. Thank you.